Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Kreitis. Today is June 17th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope everyone out there is doing well. Before I get this episode started, I just want to say happy belated Father's Day to all the dads out there. Of course, I believe my dad's the best. And of course, my dad would think that my grandfather is the best, and yet somehow both of those statements are probably true. So happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Hope everyone treated you well over the weekend. You most definitely deserve it. Also, I want to apologize in advance if I sound a little nasally or congested. Some allergies are hitting me, so if my voice cracks or gives way, I apologize in advance. Hopefully this is just short-lived, but something must be in the air. So a lot to get to today. There was a lot that transpired. I know I wasn't able to do a podcast on Friday, but a lot transpired over the weekend, and we're continuing this three-ring circus here so far this week. So a lot to get to. U.S. sends 1,000 troops to the Middle East. The Iranian boat video. I know we talked about this last week with the oil tanker strike and that black and white video that was a little grainy. I'm going to talk about that. Then we have the conflicting reports. Obviously, the United States is saying that it was a mine that was placed on the hull of these vessels. But then you have the crew of the Japanese tanker saying that they saw flying objects. So was it mines? Was it missiles? What's going on? We have conflicting reports. This is no surprise. Further today, we have Iran set to ignore the uranium caps that were set by the original agreement. Of course, Trump backed out of the Iran deal. The European Union is still involved. However, Iran is saying that we're going to ignore these uranium caps that you placed on us. We're going to continue to enrich. We're going to do it. President Xi of China is set to meet with Kim Jong-Un this week, which I am interpreting as a power play, and we're going to get to that in a little bit because we have the upcoming G20 meeting in Japan later this month, and that's supposed to be a real doozy. Perhaps both world leaders, meaning President Trump and President Xi, will meet. Perhaps they won't, so we're going to have a discussion on that. At the same time, we have the United States starting to downplay the G20 meeting in regards to the U.S.-China trade talks. U.S. companies were testifying before Congress, complaining about the tariffs, warning about the tariffs and how it will have negative effects here in the United States. Chinese holdings of United States treasuries at a 2-year low. What does that mean? We'll discuss. And lastly, we have President Donald Trump is looking to deport millions of illegals. If we have time, we'll get to that at the end of the discussion. So, first things first, if the black and white grainy video that we were presented by the Defense Department, I actually did a little bit of research on this, and I happened to find that this it's not Defense Department footage. It's actually a classic Three Stooges short, 15 minutes and 21 seconds long. Moe, Larry, Curly. The Stooges on the seas. I'm not making this up. This is Three Stooges footage that we're seeing here. $700 billion a year that we spend on defense, and that's the best camera we have. This is ridiculous. Now, I don't know if that's supposed to be what we're supposed to look at and say that, well, conclusively, that's the evidence that is going to drive us into World War III, a black and white, grainy Three Stooges era film footage. I really hope it's not. I really hope people start to shake their head and sort of, what, that doesn't make sense. That's the Iranians. Does it say Iran on the side of the boat? Is that their uniforms? I mean, that's the best our government can give us for an excuse to go into war. I mean, hopefully we don't go. I'm serious here. We have to watch this because this will trigger World War III because everybody is going to be involved. We have the United Arab Emirates upping the ante. We have the Saudis upping the ante, calling for the United States to get more involved, that you can't have the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman in question because so much of the world's oil supply travels through that waterway. So, there's a lot of saber rattling taking place right now. And, of course, in the midst of all of this, and with the Iranians saying, we're going to ignore these uranium caps and we're going to continue to enrich, now we're sending at least 1,000 more troops to the Middle East. It was only last month that we were talking about thousands going last month. For what purpose? To prevent an escalation. That's what we were told. We are sending U.S. troops to prevent further escalation. Well, what happened? Further escalation. This is something that I warned against, because you send more people into the area, you're just asking for trouble. Now again, you make these decisions. Do you want to send people there? Do you want to flex your muscles? Do you want to send a message to the Iranians that we're serious, the United States is serious, that we are going to protect our interest and the interests of our allies in this region, that we are not going to allow you to take hostage the Strait of Hormuz in these trade routes? Okay, that's the move you made. But here is what we now have to deal with. Hopefully this does not escalate further, but so far it is. We will see if we can somehow work our magic diplomatically to prevent all-out war, because who else is starting to chime in but none other than the Israelis? And of course, I'm sure the Israelis would love the United States to do its dirty work with one of its quote-unquote enemies in the Middle East, and of course that being Iran. So how much blood and treasure do we have to waste to make good for the Saudis, who I really don't think are, quite frankly, our allies, the United Arab Emirates, and even Israel for that matter? I mean, how much more are we going to spend? How many more lives need to be lost or ruined? And not just on this side of the pond, but over there. How many? Ask yourself, because it's a war is not pretty. I've never been, don't want to be. Okay? But I have the ability to put myself in other people's shoes. And I just don't think that you want to wear those shoes. Now, if we were truly attacked and there was a massive amount of life that was lost, damage to property, to a city or something, that's a different story. This is basically another preemptive war, perhaps. Hopefully not. Very akin to Iraq. And how did that turn out? Oh, not so good. Not so good. Now, there are reports out there that are saying that the President Trump, does not want to go to war. I really hope that's true, and I hope that we don't. But we saw last month 4 oil tankers get hit. We saw 2 get hit last week. Iran is now playing the game. We're calling your bluff, strongman. We're going to continue to enrich our uranium. What are you going to do about it? We send another 1,000 troops to the area? Is there going to be some more escalation? Or will that finally bring somebody to the negotiating table? We're going to have to wait and see, but it deserves our attention. Now, the other interesting thing, too, with all of this narrative is the fact that we, the United States, is claiming that these were mines of some sort that were placed on the hull of these vessels and they were exploded. Of course, the one, we're told, did not explode, and somehow this Iranian vessel was able to get up to the hull after the initial explosions while there were U.S. forces in the area, U.S. boats, drones, and other aircraft swirling around. They were somehow able to get up to the hull of this boat. We were able to take that 1941 footage, send it out there, and say, look, conclusively, that's the Iranians taking an unexploded mine off of the hull of that Japanese tanker. Now, if you want to believe that, stick around. I have a couple bridges to sell to you. This is pathetic, but this is our government, so I guess it's par for the course. So we're going to keep you updated on what's going on here, but a lot to pay attention to. And again, let's pray for peace, no war. Now, we have President Xi set to meet with Kim Jong-Un of North Korea, I believe, on Thursday. And again, this is ahead of the G20 meeting, which is set to take place at the end of June in Japan. I am interpreting this as a power play, a power move by President Xi of China. Why? Because we know that this relationship between North Korea's Kim Jong-un and President Trump is one that has been blossoming. And again, I give the president a lot of credit in trying to resolve this issue with the North Koreans diplomatically. That he has been able to have a couple summits with Kim Jong-un. Of course, he wants to talk about it being a beautiful relationship. I hope that it is a beautiful relationship. He talks about these beautiful back and forth letters that are being sent. I hope there are beautiful letters being sent back and forth to promote peace and prosperity, not war and disaster. But the interesting thing is, China has a lot of power. China has a lot of leverage over North Korea. They're their neighbor. China, I guess you can sort of consider North Korea's ally, maybe the only one in the world. So you have to pay attention to what President Xi and Kim Jong-un talk about, what will become public, and what is going to be in the back of our minds here in America, because how is the president going to sort of make tactical maneuvers? Because is President Xi going to say, hey, whatever you and Trump got going on, I'll double it, basically. I'll double whatever he's offering you. Oh, really? No, we'll stick with you then. So it's going to be interesting to see how this gets played out. But I'm interpreting this as a power move, and I think it's quite interesting because this is a chess piece on the board that is very important to President Trump, and it should be, because we are trying to establish peace and prosperity, some sort of trade with the North Koreans. Because if we can bring the North Korean people into the 21st century, that's going to be a good thing for everybody. It really is. We need to talk, we need to trade, we need to travel. We don't need the tariffs, we don't need the temper tantrums, we don't need the trouble. Okay? Talk, trade, and travel. You start doing those three things, you'll be surprised at how prosperous and how peaceful we can be. When you start to understand the similarities as opposed to what we say we have that's not in common, you really start to see some progress. So, again, this is a power play, in my opinion, of President Xi set to meet with Kim Jong-Un this Thursday for a couple days. And hopefully, we can continue to see progress, but this could be a 180. Maybe Kim Jong-Un starts to cause a little bit more problems. If that's the case, then we can probably surmise that President Xi got to him. But hopefully, again, that's not the case. And we can continue with this back and forth relationship between the United States and North Korea with the help of the Chinese, because why keep millions of people in that state of despair? We can bring them up. We should help them. That's the American way. Now, we have the United States downplaying the G20 meeting with President Donald Trump and President Xi of China. We had Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, out there downplaying it, saying, yeah, well, we don't expect to have a deal at the end of this month, but we are hoping that we can have a discussion about having further discussions. That's par for the course. I don't think anybody out there who was reasonably thinking, I don't think that anybody out there reasonably thinking was going to think that there was going to actually be a deal struck at G20. It was just maybe these two world leaders will get together, hash some things out, or at least agree to have further discussions. Now, of course, in the not too distant past, we had President Trump out there saying, look, President Xi better show up to the G20, and he better meet with me, because if he doesn't, it's not going to be good. If he doesn't, we're going to put more tariffs on Chinese goods. Now it's all being downplayed. Oh, well, we're not going to threaten anymore. Remember, this all goes to that strongman strategy that I was talking about. This all goes to the credibility issue, because this is basically a red line, in my opinion. Because he gave him a red line. You either show up and you meet with me, or I'm putting on tariffs. Now they're downplaying it, and we're not expecting any miracles this time. So if the president wants to play the strongman, and he wants to put a line in the sand, again, this goes back to the analogy. I said, look, if you're going to threaten somebody, if you're going to threaten to break their legs if they cross that line, well, if they cross that line, you got to break their legs, because you're going to lose all credibility on the other side. And that's exactly what my letter to the president was all about. It was all about the whole gist of it was about credibility. Because if you lose your credibility, you lose your effectiveness to lead. And that's what's coming into question. So if President Xi wants to do another power play and perhaps not meet with President Trump at the G20 meeting, then what's President Trump to do? He's on the record. He said it multiple times. I am going to increase the tariffs on the Chinese. I'm just going to do it. And why wouldn't he? He's the tariff man. He loves tariffs. He says it's a boon for the U.S. economy. It's bringing jobs back to this country. It's increasing wages. It's increasing GDP. It's increasing the U.S. Treasury by the tune of billions and billions of dollars. It's just the best thing since sliced bread. So why wouldn't he want to increase tariffs? It becomes a very interesting question, doesn't it? So again, we're going to have to wait and see. It's only about a week and a half, 2 weeks away as to when the G20 takes place in Japan. Whether these two world leaders will meet remains up in the air, because there has been no formal statement from Washington or Beijing that there is a formal meeting set between President Trump and President Xi. But I got to tell you, and this is very important, again, this goes to the whole thing of credibility. This is why I stress this. If President Xi doesn't show up, Or he says, I don't want to meet with President Trump. President Trump is going to have to make a move because they're going to call his bluff. And that is just going to cause the markets, they're just going to go into a tizzy. They're probably going to go into a tailspin regardless of what takes place with the Federal Reserve this week. So be sure to tune into our economic podcast today and throughout this week because there's going to be a lot of news coming out because it's not only the Federal Reserve, it's the Bank of Japan, it's the Bank of England. And I'm going to get to it in today's economic podcast, but the Reserve Bank of Australia is looking forward to cutting interest rates again, as predicted here on the Capital News. No surprise to us that economy is deteriorating, especially in the midst of these ongoing trade wars, which is more of a cover than anything else. There's the overarching story is slowing global economic growth. So that's really what we're looking at here. But this is a dangerous hand of poker. The president wants to play the strongman. The Iranians want to play the strongman. North Korea's Kim Jong-Un wants to be the strongman. And China's President Xi wants to be the strongman. So it's basically a big game of chicken, a big game of poker. Who's bluffing? Who's got the aces? Who's got the queens? This is what's going on. Who's got the inside straight? Who's going to blink first is what we are in the midst of right now. So we got to pay attention to this. This is getting very interesting. It truly is. We also had further today, which is in agreement with what we were talking about earlier here. We have the U.S. companies providing testimony before Congress today saying, look, this whole trade war might be getting out of hand. Changing supply chains is not going to be as easy peasy as everybody thinks it's going to be. If we're going to move our resources and our plants from China to, let's say, Vietnam, there's a lot of problems there. They don't have the infrastructure in Vietnam like they do in China. They don't have the people. They don't have the skill set in Vietnam like they do in China. So the expertise isn't there. So we might be avoiding the 25% tariff, but the additional cost of not having the right infrastructure and a less educated or skilled workforce is going to cost even more. So, we're not leaving China anytime soon, but we're going to be slapped with these 25% tariffs, which is not going to be a good thing for U.S. consumers because why? Well, they're anticipating that they're going to be passing through some of that increased cost onto U.S. consumers at one point sooner rather than later. Of course, that's not what we're told by the administration. We're told that costs are actually going to go down. Excuse me again. My apologies. So what's going to transpire? Is this going to lead President Trump to blink or what? Because here's what it's going to come down to. Does President Xi of China, does he think that his government, his administration, his central bank has the ammunition, has the tools in the arsenal necessary to stimulate the Chinese economy no matter what happens, no matter how long this quote-unquote trade war continues? Because if the answer is yes, if he thinks that he and his government are able to stimulate this Chinese economy no matter what happens, then why is he going to come back to the trade table? Why is he going to come back and negotiate? Why is he going to give Trump that win, so to speak? Because the further along this goes, the closer and closer we get to really being full swing into the 2020 presidential election. And Trump wants to be the deal maker. Now, Trump has spoken out of both sides of his mouth like he usually does. Again, I'm not picking on President Trump. This is what they all do. But on one hand, he says, and we were strung along for several months, the beginning of this year until May, that we're going to have a fantastic historic deal with the Chinese, and then boom, it fell apart at the beginning of May. And if you read the Chinese media, of course, the U.S. media, or the administration, I should say, is blaming China, that they're the ones who reneged, who got up and walked away. Chinese media says the exact opposite. It was the United States who reneged and walked away. So again, this goes to the question of credibility. Because, hypothetically speaking, because we don't know yet, at the G20 meeting, if President Trump and President Xi actually do meet, will they come out with the same statement? Will they come out and agree with what was established, what was discussed? Because you could have, hypothetically speaking, and this is reasonable because this could most definitely happen, you could have President Trump come out of such a meeting, such a discussion with the Chinese leader and saying, everything was fine, everything was fantastic, we're going to continue our negotiations. He could say the Washington delegation is going to go to Beijing in a couple weeks, and if things are fine, the Beijing delegation will come back to Washington, D.C. like we have been back and forth for the first 5 months of this year. Interesting. What happens if the Chinese say, no, that's not true? Who is the world to believe? Who are the markets to believe? This goes right back to our question of credibility, doesn't it? Because if the president wants to continue with the hyperbole and the exaggerations, and he is no longer believed, and the world and the markets actually believe the Chinese, the world and the markets actually believe a communist state over the words of a sitting United States president, well, we're in a lot of trouble, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, that's a hypothetical, but it's quite possible, given the history of the rhetoric of this president, stringing along the American people, pretty much promising that there was going to be a fantastic historic deal, that there was going to be some sort of signing ceremony at his estate at Mar-a-Lago at the end of March. Well, we know that didn't take place. So what's going to take place now? So that's a hypothetical, and I think it's one that could happen. But that's going to call into question the credibility if that actually plays out. I hope these two leaders can get together. I hope they can strike some sort of agreement to make a future agreement, and things can actually move forward. I think it'll be better for both sides. But I think the fact that everybody wants to be the strong man here, it makes it less and less likely that that's going to happen. Because Trump wants to be the strong man, he wants to be the victor. President Xi, the same thing. He wants to be the strong man, he wants to be the victor. If you just go to the G20 and you bend over and take it from the other side, well, you're going to look weak. And both of these world leaders do not want to look weak abroad and definitely not domestically. And when you have the trade hawks in both of their ears, which is apparent by their rhetoric and their actions, that it's the trade hawks, those who want tariffs and want the strongman image out there, they have both of these guys' ears. They're just not going to turn on a dime because they somehow met at G20 in Japan. It's just not going to happen, in my opinion. But we're going to have to wait and see. So this is a dangerous hand of poker, in my opinion, because it's not going to be President Xi and President Trump who are paying the price for this. It's going to be the average Chinaman, and it's going to be the average American. I mean, that's just how it's going to play out. And it's a true shame, but that's usually how it works. We have the Chinese holdings of United States treasuries at a 2-year low. What does this mean? Well, this has been a continuing trend. This isn't some sort of out-of-the-blue escalation. I don't anticipate that the Chinese are going to offload a whole bunch of United States treasuries. I just don't. That would hurt them. It would hurt us. It just wouldn't be a good move. If they really wanted to go nuclear with it, I guess that could happen, but that's so far down the line. There are so many other things that they could do to us and that we could do to them. I just don't think that that's going to be something that they would play. Now, of course, one interesting thing, again, this is another hypothetical, but it's something that could escalate, and I'm just throwing it out there because there's a probability attached to it, in my opinion, because we went after their tech giant, Huawei Technologies. In retaliation, the Chinese could go after Apple. I mean, Apple has been driving this U.S. economy, the U.S. stock market, to new highs, especially on the NASDAQ. So if the Chinese want to retaliate in kind, I mean, they could hit Apple. And you could have Apple drop 10% in a week, 20% in a week. I mean, that's no exaggeration. So this thing could get out of hand very quickly if both sides want to play the strongman and both want to pretend that they're both holding pocket aces or pocket kings, or they got an inside straight coming or something. It's a poker game. Make no doubt about it. It's all over. It's the North Koreans, it's the Iranians, it's the Israelis, it's the United Arab Emirates, it's the Saudis, it's the Chinese, it's the United States of America. Lastly, I said we might have time to get to. I'm going to get to it here briefly. We have Trump looking to deport millions of illegals. Excuse me. I don't know what this is going to mean. I don't know how many millions of people are actually going to be... I'm sorry. This is just cracking me up. I don't know if he's actually going to do this. Do we have enough manpower to sort of round up millions of illegal immigrants throughout this country. And what is that going to do? I mean, again, I am not for illegal immigration. How much is this going to cost? Who are you actually going after? How nasty is this going to get? Are these people working? Because now you're going to remove millions of people from, the workforce, even if they're truly counted or not. You're going to have upward pressure on prices, which will get translated through, if these companies want to maintain their margins, higher cost to the American consumer. This could spiral out of control very quickly, and that's just from the economic standpoint. Now, if you want to talk about the illegal immigration thing, if you're really big on that, and you want them all out of here, okay, I can understand that argument, but I mean, feasibly speaking, that's a big undertaking, and there are going to be economic consequences to it on the other side. It's going to cost our government a lot of money, which is already running record monthly deficits, and it's going to cause labor shortages, which is going to put upward pressure on some of these wages, but that will translate through to higher prices eventually. So be careful what you ask for, is all I'm saying. That's just sort of the economics behind it. So we covered a lot today. 1,000 more United States troops are being sent to the Middle East. We have the Three Stooges, black and white, 1941, Iranian boat video. Iran is ignoring the uranium cap. Xi is meeting Kim Jong-Un. The United States is downplaying the G20 meeting. United States companies are testifying before Congress, warning of an escalation in this trade war because prices on U.S. consumers are likely to go up. The Chinese are unloading United States treasuries, and we are looking to deport millions of illegal immigrants to the United States of America. Whoa, Nelly, and it's just Monday. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you as always. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. Leave your comments. We do love hearing from you. Again, my apologies for my voice and my allergies today, but hopefully that's short-lived. This is the Capital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.